Most novels tell one story, but Cloud Atlas tells 6. Each with vastly different styles, genres, and voices, spanning across multiple locations around the world, taking place across different time periods and backdrops throughout history. From the 19th century journal of a passenger on board a ship in the Pacific, to the verbal record of a clone created for the sole purpose of working in a dystopian fast food restaurant in a futuristic Neo-Seoul. And finally, if that wasn't interesting enough, you can't forget the icing on the cake, the cherry on top, the structure. This book is the bookification, is that a word? The personification of a Russian nesting doll. Each story is contained within each other, often encountered, observed, and even read by characters in each individual story. It's an incredibly ambitious concept for a novel. It's like the high-stakes gambling equivalent of Wild Ideas, but does it pay off? Welcome to Between the Lines Books and Films. My name is Dylan, and I'm here to share my passion for storytelling with you by exploring iconic books and films. In today's video, I'll be discussing Cloud Atlas by David Mitchell, not to be confused with the British comedian of the same name. What makes this novel so unique from its epic scope, unique storytelling elements, and ultimately whether I think you should read Cloud Atlas or not. The video will be relatively spoiler-free, so if you haven't heard of or read Cloud Atlas before, you don't have to worry about having it spoiled by me. So without further ado, let's get started. Cloud Atlas is the third novel by British novelist David Mitchell. As I'm sure you already gathered from my opening rant, the novel tells 6 different stories, which is an incredibly ambitious concept for a novel, and it can make it slightly difficult to actually discuss what this book is about. Because really it's about a lot of different things. There's so much stuff going on here, it's difficult to pinpoint it down to one precise storyline synopsis. And this isn't David Mitchell's first time doing something like this. He's kind of known for this particular style of writing, where he bounces from story to story, character to character, which also makes it difficult to describe his writing style, because really he writes in so many different styles, and he's incredibly effective at most of, if not all of those styles. He's basically like a chameleon. He kind of slips into the skin of different characters and manages to kind of speak in their voices and express their inner thoughts and beliefs. In fact, in his first ever novel, Ghostwritten, which is quite similar to Cloud Atlas, there is actually a character who's kind of a being or a creature who bounces from host to host and takes over their bodies and experiences reality through their perspectives. And David Mitchell is basically like this, except in a much less creepy and disturbing way. Although his style and voice as an author is kind of hard to pinpoint across all of these different characters and personalities, no person can quite 100% capture someone else's experience perfectly without injecting a little bit of themselves into the mix. And I don't think that's something you can really escape as a writer. It's just something that happens spontaneously. It's the same way that you can't really change your own voice, or you can't change the way you look. Everyone's got different unique aspects of themselves that kind of just come across naturally. One thing that does stick out across all his different perspectives and characters is a sense of whimsy and awe. You get the sense reading his work that David Mitchell really loves his characters, and he really loves the worlds that they inhabit, and he wants to do them justice, and he genuinely really cares. It comes across very well in his writing. This is absolutely his biggest strength as a novelist, and sometimes it's also his biggest weakness. Sometimes, personally, I felt that although his excitement and energy is contagious and you can feel it when you're reading the work, it can occasionally actually get in the way of the story itself. And although he's obviously very talented, sometimes his ability to slip into other characters' voices, you can tell he gets a little excited and carried away with it, and it sometimes borders on a little bit exaggerated and almost caricaturish occasionally. So it can kind of sometimes go off in one direction, from being on one hand really grounded in its perspective and voice to sometimes being a little bit outlandish. As I had said, this is his greatest strength as well, and the contrast is what leads his stories to be really unique. He's an author who's not afraid to take big swings, and I really respect that. It's easy to kind of follow trends and do what other people are doing, but he's out here doing his own thing, and it doesn't always hit, but when it does, it hits really hard. And across the board, despite this paradox in his writing style, what really shines through is an incredible sense of sincerity, regardless of who or what he's portraying. He really cares about his characters, and you can definitely tell, you can feel it. You know you're in the trusted hands of someone with good intentions that really does care. It's really something special, and Cloud Atlas is him at his absolute best. I think this is really where he hit his stride, and I really felt any of the concerns that I had with some of his other novels that I have read. Whatever he did with this novel in particular, he got the recipe spot on. The mixture was just right. The balance between voices, the pacing, the structure, it's so smooth and seamless. You never get bogged down in any of the stories because they're all so interesting and so unique, and they all complement each other so well. It's like a Neapolitan ice cream. It's just the right amount where you feel satisfied and you still haven't eaten too much where you feel sick. Okay, so I've established that it's difficult to talk about this book without spoiling anything, but I can kind of give a little overview of some of the different styles and voices that you can expect in each story throughout the novel. So let's go through them one by one. I already mentioned at the start of the video, you've got the 19th century journal by a passenger on a ship in the Pacific. Next, you've got the love letters of a struggling musician in 1930s Bruges, writing to his lover while he studies under a famous composer. Then you've got the 1970s political thriller from the perspective of a journalist who's uncovering a massive government conspiracy. It's got twists, turns, espionage. Then you've got this sort of caper story from the perspective of a writer in modern day England who ends up in an elderly people's home by force. And then you go into the future, you've got Neo Soul, and this section is a verbal record from a clone, and they call this record an Orison? I hope I'm saying that right. It's basically a term that they've invented for like this type of record that's put into some kind of machine. This clone is specifically created for the sole purpose of working in a dystopian fast food restaurant chain where all the other workers look exactly the same as her. Then the final perspective is told much further down the line in the future in a sort of post-apocalyptic world set on islands where humans have kind of returned back to a sort of primal tribe society. And each of these stories, as I said, is incredibly unique. They're told through their own individual writing styles and voices. It's like a smorgasbord of all the different genres and styles coming together to form something new, something unexpected. As I mentioned at the start of the video, it's like a Russian nesting doll. As each story moves on, you move into the next layer, you pick out the next story inside the Russian nesting doll metaphor, and on and on and on, until you finally get to the end. And then when it's finally finished, you do the same thing back to front. You go backwards from the future all the way back to the past until the Russian nesting doll is neatly put back together again, and you've got this amazing like big picture perspective of all of the characters and how they interweave and interact with each other throughout time. And although these stories are relatively self-contained, they do interact and do interweave with each other in surprising ways, sometimes blatantly and other times in passing. And although they are all very different stories and all unique in their own right, it does feel like they fit together perfectly like a puzzle. And they all complement each other really well. It kind of reminds me of like watching a really good jazz performance where it's got this sense of spontaneity, but it's underpinned by excellent technical ability and structure and music theory. There's a really great quote from Cloud Atlas itself that kind of captures the sensation that it leaves you with after you've read it. Our lives are not our own. We are bound to others, past and present, and by each crime and every kindness, we birth our future. David Mitchell uses this opportunity of his unique structure to explore many interesting themes and ideas throughout the novel, both in microscopic detail and then also taking a step back with a much larger, grand, sweeping, big picture perspective. Cloud Atlas explores the vastness of time and the role we play as both individuals and as a collective throughout the story of time. Ultimately, how our beliefs, thoughts, and actions or inactions can affect each other in ways that we would never be able to perceive. When we look at history, we think of important figures and larger-than-life characters who shaped the world around them by their influence. But there's a whole other side of history that people often neglect, and that's the fact that, yes, there are these iconic figures, but they're often the culmination of many people who came before them, many people who influenced them and affected their lives and led them to make the decisions that they made, and ultimately go on to affect more people down the line. It's like a cyclical, reciprocal sort of thing that's a part of life that I don't know if many people really think about that often, because as humans, we're drawn to stories. We feel the need to have heroes and villains, and life is like chess. You've got the queen, you've got the king, the knights, the rooks, the bishops, and then you've got the pawns. And the pawns, people don't talk about the pawns so much, but they can move across the board. They can make choices and actions that affect the game. And Cloud Atlas explores some of these characters, both big and small, their place in the world and how they affect the course of history. And it also explores how their stories are recorded, how they're perceived, discovered, interpreted, or sometimes forgotten entirely. So should you read Cloud Atlas? Absolutely. This book is amazing. The scope of Cloud Atlas is impossibly vast, unmistakably unique, cosmically epic, incredibly intimate, and deeply profound. The list goes on and on. This book has everything. It's like a cosmic sandwich, gluing the past, the present, and the future all together in ways that complement and enrich each other. Sometimes subtly, sometimes jarringly, sometimes imperceptibly, and sometimes like a good old punch in the gut. And the final result, it leaves you with a sensation that everything and everyone is connected in the grand scheme of things. It makes you feel like your dreams, your actions, your thoughts, your beliefs will have repercussions and will echo like ripples in time. It's an incredibly uplifting book that reminds you that regardless of struggles, hardships, or heartbreak, life is full of meaning and is beautiful. And sometimes that meaning is hard to fully comprehend until you take a step back and look at things through a fresh perspective, or look at the big picture. And you know, that's why the structure of the story is so special, because we don't have the ability to actually experience reality through that perspective. But, you know, when you read a novel, you can kind of get a taste of that, and it can make you view the world in a way that reminds you of these things that I think we all know deep down, but we just get so bogged down by the day-to-day routine that we kind of lose track of the fact that we're actually like experiencing reality. Sometimes life can get so heavy, the weight just presses down on your chest and suffocates you. And during those moments, it's easy to lose track. It's easy to become overwhelmed, and it's easy to feel weak, insignificant, and that things are meaningless. But Cloud Atlas reminds us of our place in the grand scheme of things. When I was a teenager, I had an intensely deep belief in the power and influence of individuals. And one of the reasons I held that belief so strongly was because of this one quote from Cloud Atlas. "My life amounts to no more than one drop in a limitless ocean, yet what is any ocean but a multitude of drops?" The special thing about this book is not only the reading experience, but how it manages to stay with you long afterwards. I can't even remember the first time I read Cloud Atlas, but it definitely like shaped me as an individual. And I can't say that for every book that I've read, or every film that I've watched, or every song that I've listened to. But I can definitely trace back many of my beliefs to that one particular quote. That's just one quote from one book that shaped me as a person. It's a core like memory that's stuck with me all these years later. I'm 27 now. I must have been like 15 or 16 or something when I read it, and it's still with me. It's still there, and I think it will still stay with me for a long time. So if anything, I'm grateful for that very inspiring piece of wisdom that this book gave me, and it's held me in good stead. So yes, absolutely read Cloud Atlas. You might have a similar experience. You might like it, you might hate it. It's worth a try, because you know, those little moments are the things that we look for when we're experiencing a work of fiction or a story. And don't just read Cloud Atlas. You know, it could be a gateway drug into his other works. David Mitchell's got an amazing portfolio of very unique stories, extremely different from what you might expect from sort of contemporary literature. And he's doing some really unique stuff. I would personally recommend Ghost Written, The Bone Clocks, and Black Swan Green. All those books are fantastic. I hope you enjoyed this video and my thoughts on Cloud Atlas by David Mitchell. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Have you read this novel or any other works by David Mitchell? Let me know in the comments, and if you've got any suggestions or ideas about movies or books that you would like me to discuss on this channel, or just recommendations in general kind of related to Cloud Atlas, music recommendations, movie recommendations, book recommendations, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear some things to check out. And if you like this video, please feel free to leave a like, a friendly comment, or subscribe for more. This has been Between the Lines Books and Films. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.